to PCQ's tutorial video on registration as a nurse with the Irish Nursing Board. The NMBI, the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Ireland, also known as the ABA. So you've done some research with what you can do with your nursing qualification, and you've realised that Ireland has some of the highest paid salaries for nurses in Europe, the standard of care is high, the elderly care sector is supported by the government, and we also have a large shortage of nurses, meaning lots of positions available. So the next step is going to be registering with the Irish Nursing Board in order to allow you to work as a nurse in Ireland. The very first thing you should do is contact a regulatory body in your country that will be able to let you know which EU directive that you meet with. In Poland, this is the Polish Nursing Board. In Romania, it's the Ministry of Health, and in Portugal, it's the Portuguese Nursing Board. There's two different directives that you can meet with. The first directive is called automatic recognition, and this directive is based strictly on your education. Nurses who qualified from Poland after 2007 will meet with this directive, Romania after 2010, and Portugal, any nurse who qualified after 1987. You'll obviously be able to tell just by the year you qualified if you meet with this directive, but it's still advisable that you check with the regulatory body in your country, as they will need to provide proof of this at a later stage in the process. The other directive which you could meet with is called acquired rights. This directive is based on your training and your work experience combined. So for example, a nurse from Poland who has a vocational school qualification but has 5 years continuous experience as a nurse in Poland in the last 7 years will meet with the directive for acquired rights. A nurse from Poland with a diploma will need 3 years experience. A nurse from Romania from before 2010 will need 5 years experience from the last 7. This directive will entitle you to the same things that the automatic recognition directive entitles you to. But you will need to provide supporting documentation as to your work experience with your application. Once you've confirmed you meet with one of these two directives, the next step will be ordering the ABA or NMBI application form. This part of the process involves a €350 fee, so it is something you need to think about. You can download the form off the internet that you will need to fill in and send back to the Irish Nursing Board in order to apply for the application. The form is a very simple form that just requires basic information like your nationality, the country in which you were trained, your name and your title, your date of birth. There's a section on the form where you can fill in the details of an authorised recruitment company that can assist you with your application. PCQ Recruitment is such a company, and by filling in our details here, you've enabled us now to contact the Nursing Board on an ongoing basis to get updates on your specific situation. At the end of the form, most nurses will be ticking the box for general nursing. However, if you're applying for the register for a midwife, psychiatric nurse, intellectual disability nurse, which would be based on what you trained as, those are the boxes you would tick. The second page is for your payment details. You'll fill in here your credit card number information in order for the Nursing Board to obtain your payment. The payment is €350, and once they've taken that payment and received this form, they will then send you a personalised application form. By personalised, the form will have your name on it, and it will also have a 6-digit ID number on the top right hand corner of every page. You want to record this number because it's this number that's used in regards to obtaining any updates from the Irish Nursing Board. We'll run through this form page by page and explain everything that you need to do within it. On the first page, it's just some basic information. Then you move on to the second page, whereas the first page you must fill in. On this page, it's just your personal details, your name, address, phone number, and contact details. And again, on the bottom of the form, the type of nurse you're applying for to be registered as. With most nurses, you'll be ticking the general nurse box. You move on to the second page. The second page is in relation to, again, authorising a recruitment company to assist you with your application process. If a recruitment company contacts the Irish Nursing Board to assist you or to get updates where you are in the present situation, they will not be able to unless you have filled in this form. If you fill in PCQ's information, then we would be able to contact the Nursing Board and get updates on your behalf. In order for a recruitment company to obtain updates, they must be a registered recruitment company and must be registered with the Irish Nursing Board. PCQ is such an agency. If you're working with a different agency, you might want to check that they are registered with the Irish Nursing Board. You need to sign this form and then date it. Page 4 of 26 is to list all competent regulatory authorities with which you have held registration. The name of the body that you hold registration, the country, state and jurisdiction. Have you worked in the country, state and jurisdiction, yes or no, and the date that you were initially registered. You will need to do this for every country with which you hold or have obtained registration. The end of this page, a section that's regularly forgotten to be filled in. If you did not register within 6 months of completing your education program in the country in which you trained, please explain. This might be a situation connected to the fact that in your country you might not be required to register straight away and it might overlap 6 months. There might also be a situation where you didn't decide to go straight to work and maybe travelled for a year and didn't obtain registration until you returned. Neither of these are issues, but they need to be explained at the end of this page. Moving on to page 5 of 26, please answer the following questions. There's 9 questions that require a yes or no answer. It's important to be honest here. If you answered no to every question, you can just move on to the next stage of the application process. However, if you've answered yes to any of the questions, you need to attach a letter signed and dated by you describing the circumstances as to why a yes. We move on then to page 6. Page 6 is your curriculum vitae. There is a list of instructions as to how this section must be filled out, but going through it briefly, the first page, being page 6, is for your current employer. If you're presently not employed, you will leave this page blank. If you are employed, you will fill in this page. As you will see, there is no section for cessation date on this page, meaning that you're still presently employed by that employer. Moving on to page 7, now we're moving on to previous employers, and you will start with your most recent previous employer and go backwards. They ask for the name of the employer and the full address of the employer. Common question here is, which language should I fill this in? In your home language, it will be the language here. The date you started and the date you finished, the duration of the post, the position held, the hours worked per week, the area of practice, and the employment specialty. So for example, if you are working as a palliative nurse, your employment specialty would be palliative nursing. If you are working as a theatre nurse, your employment specialty would be theatre nursing. The total number of beds in the hospital, the primary language of practice in the post, details of the post. They're only looking for a brief explanation here of your duties, and then your reason for leaving that position. If you have 2 present employers, you will have photocopied the previous page and filled it in twice, as in you will not have filled in a previous post as a present employer. Page 8 is the continuation of your CV. Page 9 is also a continuation of the CV, and then we move on to page 10. Page 10 is a part of the form that causes great confusion. It asks you to explain any gaps or overlaps in employment history. An overlap is where you've held 2 jobs at the same time for a period of time. In that situation, you would fill in the dates that this overlap occurred and explain why. It could be as simple as, due to financial circumstances, I required extra income, so I had obtained extra employment. A gap, obviously, is where you have not held a job for a period of time. So for example, you might have had 6 months maternity leave. You might have taken 3 months off to travel. You might have been in between employment and been taking some time out. But this also needs to be explained by filling in the date that you'd left your last employer, the date you'd started with the next employer, and an explanation of the gap. It's not required you go into a lot of detail, but it is required that you do explain what this gap was for. You will need to do this for every gap or overlap you have on your CV. In some circumstances, that might be more than 4, and in that case, you will just copy this page and keep on filling it out and add that to the application. Page 11 is for your post-registration educational qualifications. Again, a page that causes a lot of confusion. These are in relation to qualifications you received after your qualification that allowed you to obtain your registration as a nurse in your home country. For example, you might have done a 2-year master's. That would be a post-registration qualification. You might have done a 6-month specialisation course in scrub nursing or palliative care or gerontology. These would be post-registration qualifications that would need to be filled in on this page. If you have obtained more than one post-registration, more than two post-registration qualifications, you can photocopy this page and fill in a third or fourth and then add that page to the application. Page 12 is a blank page, so nothing to worry about there. And then we move on to page 13. Page 13 is for applicants for registration in the General Nurse Division of the Register, which will be most nurses that PCQ Recruitment would be working with. You fill in the details, the name and address of the university, college or school from which your general nursing qualification was obtained. Again, you would fill these details in your home language. The date your general nursing course commenced and the date it finished, and the duration of the course in years and months. You'll also then have to specify the name of your qualification, either a certificate, diploma or degree, and the language in which you studied. Page 14 is another blank page, and then we move on to page 15. Please read carefully before signing. It's basically a declaration page. You need to read the page in detail, sign and date the page in the bottom. This is a page that's regularly forgotten in the application process because it's mostly writing and people fail to see the spot for signature at the end. So please revisit your application at the end just to confirm that you've signed page 15. Page 16 is a blank page, and then moving on to page 17, which is the final stage of the application. At the back of the form, there's a Form A, Form B and Form C. Form A is a form that needs to be filled out by the school with which you obtained your training. However, if you meet with one of the EU directives, this form is not necessary. Form B is a form that needs to be completed out by an employer as a reference. Again, Form B does not need to be filled out if you meet with one of the EU directives. And then we move on to Form C. Form C does need to be filled out by everybody. Form C needs to be completed by the regulatory bodies that hold your registration in whichever countries you might be registered. Many nurses are registered in multiple countries. For example, you could be registered in Hungary, Romania and the UK. You could be registered in Poland, Germany and the UK. In those cases, you would need to have this form completed by all three of those regulatory bodies. The Polish Nursing Board, the NMC in the UK, whichever body you're registered with. This form needs to be filled in, stamped, accompanied by a certificate of your registration and accompanied by your EU certificate or the letter that the regulatory body in your country will give you explaining which directive you need to meet. It is very important that this form is sent directly to the Irish Nursing Board by your regulatory body and not sent by you yourself. If it is sent by you yourself, it will be refused. Your regulatory body will provide information in your home language. Once the Irish Nursing Board receive that information, they will mail it back to you and ask you to obtain a certified translation and then return it to them. This is the part of the application process that will imply you meet with a directive and do not need forms A and B. At the very back of the form then, you have a checklist of the things that you must do. You must have completed the application form that we've just gone through. You must supply them with a certified copy of your birth certificate. You must supply them with a certified copy of your passport. We would highly recommend that you do a certified copy, coloured copy of your passport. If you're married, you need a certified copy of your marriage certificate. If you're divorced, of your divorce certificate, whichever is applicable. You also need to submit 2 recent passport size photographs. We would recommend that you sign the back of these photographs and also write in your reference number, the 6-digit number, on the top right hand corner of the page. You would then put all this in an envelope and send it back to the Irish Nursing Board. So the Irish Nursing Board will have received 2 envelopes from you, and in some cases, depending on your country of origin, 3. They will have received your completed application form along with supporting documents, and they will have received a completed Form C from your nursing board stating that your registration is in good standing, accompanied by a certificate of your registration. They will also have received what we call the EU certificate, the letter that explains which EU directive you might happen to meet with. depending on your country of origin as to where that certificate comes from, but it normally comes from one of two places, either your nursing board or the Ministry of Health in your country. Again, if it is coming from a separate location such as the Ministry of Health, it's very important that this document is sent directly to the Irish Nursing Board. They will then return it to you, as it is more than likely going to be in your home language, requiring it to come back to them with a certified translation which you can obtain yourself and send back to them. Once the Nursing Board have received all these documents, including the final one being the certified translation, you will move into the assessment stage of the process. The assessment stage of the process takes 30 working days or 6 weeks. At the end of that stage, you will receive your registration. You will receive a final form that needs to be filled in with a final payment of €145. Once this is completed, by post you will be sent your certificate of registration, at which point you will be legally entitled to work as a nurse in Ireland. Again, if you have any questions or need any assistance with this process, please contact PCQ. Visit our website at www.pcqrecruitment.com. Email us at info@pcqrecruitment.com or click the link below to visit us from there. Thank you very much for your time, and looking forward to working with you, and looking forward to assisting you with your registration process with the Irish Nursing Board.